Hi everybody, Ed Bowie here, and welcome to my PowerPoint podcast where I will be discussing the two Cold War ideologies that were followed by the United States and the Soviet Union. But before I get right into that, I'll first take a moment to present a brief overview of the Cold War itself. From 1945 to 1991, the world was divided between the United States and its allies and the Soviet Union and their allies. Countries would pick which side they would want to align with and would either follow capitalism if they chose the United States, or communism if they chose the Soviet Union instead. Capitalism was the ideology of the United States and Western culture in general. It was basically the economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry were controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the government. You also find that many synonyms were used to describe capitalism, with free trade and free market being examples, among others. Communism, on the other hand, was the ideology followed by the Soviet Union and its allies. Communism was very different from capitalism in that it instead focused on the elimination of social classes, which would lead to a society in which all property was publicly owned and that each person would work and be paid according to their needs and abilities. And this was a much more controlled system when actually put into practice. Traditionally, when comparing the United States and the Soviet Union with each other during the Cold War, one would use the basic right and left scale in which to determine how different the ideologies were politically. The problem with this method is that it was almost too basic and that it would be too easy to place each side on opposite ends of the spectrum. Because of this, in order for someone to completely understand the differences between the United States and the Soviet Union ideologically, I would suggest using the political compass instead. The political compass is just a basic X and Y axis plane used to chart different political ideologies and philosophies. The Y axis shows how much social control a system would have over a person's everyday life, with a higher or positive position meaning more control, and a lower or negative position meaning less control. Conversely, the x-axis shows how much economic control a particular system would have, with a right or positive position correlating with less control, and a left or negative position meaning more control. So what does this mean in analyzing the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War? It means that we could now accurately and appropriately chart capitalism's and communism's differences in relation to each other using the political compass. The Soviet Union under communism had a high social and economic control over its citizens, as demonstrated by communism's relative position on the compass. Compared to the United States with its position on the compass, with capitalism having more economic freedom with a relatively moderate social control over its citizens. While one could argue how true the United States and the Soviet Union were to capitalism and communism, the political compass still gives us a simple and effective way in directly comparing these two ideologies.